I was asked, would I go on ITV's Good Morning Britain show and talk about the fact that Article 50 is going to be triggered this week and debate it with Alistair Campbell. Remember him? He was Blair's chief spin doctor. And I thought, well, that seems like a very nice, gentle start to my week. This is what happened.
When are you people, when are you and Johnson and Gove going to be held to account for the pack of lies you told? Are we going to stay in the customs union or not?
No.
Right. And did Boris Johnson say we would?
No.
Yes, he did. £350 million for the health service. Are we going to get it or not?
Are
we going to get it or not?
Shall I tell you what the biggest lie is?
£350 million. Are we going to get it or not?
You told us it was a common market, it was about trade,
1974.
and not to worry our little heads. 50 years of lies. 50 years of lies.
50 years
and we've now redressed the balance. And we're now getting our independence back, our pride back, our self-respect back. We're going to be a proper nation.
Sorry, we're going to be a laughing stock.
Let's celebrate. I'll buy you lunch.
Let's
celebrate.
I don't want
fun.
lunch, because lunch to me would be a waste of time when I can spend my time trying to stop this madness.
You're not going to stop it. It's all over.
Well, I don't agree with you.
It's done.
Well, I was trying to be civil and say, let's go and have lunch and talk about it, but no. And I was really surprised that in the green room, before we went on air, he was saying, no, it's not going to happen. Britain is not going to leave the European Union. And it seems to me that people like Alistair are completely in denial. They simply can't accept the result of the referendum last year. They never thought Article 50 would be triggered, and by the way, there are many in Brussels who thought the same thing, and yet here we are. And I did try and reason with him. I did say, but Alistair, the war is over. Come out of the foxhole. You know, the economy has not collapsed. A whole big new world is opening up to us. The EU itself is mired in failure and division. Oh, and by the way, 68% of us simply now want to get on with it, not the 52% who voted Brexit last year. So, if you are a Remain voter, what would it take for you to come on board and to support Brexit? Now, if there's no convincing you, then call me on 0345 60 60 973. If you think you could be swayed, then you can text me on 84850. If you're already a convert, well, use the hashtag Farage and LBC and tweet at LBC. And don't forget, you can watch this all on LBC's Facebook page live right now. And I'm going to go to Charlie in Cardiff. Charlie, good evening. Are you a Remainer?
I am, Nigel, yes. Good evening.
Good evening. So you listened to my, conversation, shouting match, I guess, with Alistair Campbell this morning. I mean, is Alistair missing something? Am I missing something? Tell me, Charlie.
Well, I must admit I didn't hear the conversation this morning.
Right.
But in answer to your question, what would persuade me to come on board would be sort of basically being convinced that it is genuinely the will of the people. In other words, a second referendum. Now, when we had the AV referendum, when Scotland and Wales had their devolution referendums, they were all on specific proposals, whereas the EU referendum was on the principle. Now,
yes, it was, Charlie. I mean, Charlie, the principle was, did we want to make our own rules and our own laws in our own country or not? That was the principle, wasn't it?
Yeah. Now, people like you, UK nationalists, and people like me, European Unionists, aren't going to change, because to us, the principle of it is more important than perhaps the cost. And we're willing to pay, you and I, because of what we firmly believe in. But in the middle, there are pragmatic people who will look at the benefits, basically the finances of it, and those people could well change their mind when we get to the actual terms.
Well,
now, if it is 68%,
yep.
then you may, that's all the more reason why the nationalists should be willing to have a second referendum. And you'll get a stronger majority then, and then that would make us more.
When you say nationalists,
because it was because it was so narrow, you see, and there were.
Charlie, you call us nationalists. We're nationists. We believe in the nation state as being the building block that we pay our taxes to, that we would defend. I mean, that's the point. There's nothing extreme or wrong in wanting to live in a nation.
No, I mean, this is why I was actually puzzled a week or two ago when you were knocking the Scottish nationalists.
I knocked them for their inconsistency. If they were what I did say, Charlie, was if they were Scottish nationalists and they wanted an independent Scotland, independent of Westminster and Brussels, whether I agreed or not, at least I could respect intellectually their position. It's the fact they call themselves nationalists, but effectively want to be a province of a new United States of Europe. That was my problem with them.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit that was something I couldn't understand. But you don't feel that Scotland should remain part of the United Kingdom, do you?
No, I do. Charlie, I do. I think they should. But look, Charlie, as you say, you are a convinced European Unionist. I think I have to say there aren't that many of you out there. You may be 10%, you may be 12%, but, if that's what you believe in and you believe in it honestly, I respect that, Charlie. I thank you for your call. What I couldn't stand over the last few decades were the politicians who pretended, don't worry, it's just about trade. It'll never really matter, when all the time they were pushing integration, and they drove me mad. What does Joe in Brighton think? Joe, you're a Remain voter, I believe.
Hiya, Nigel. Yeah, I am. I'm pretty much on the fence. I just want to get on with things now. But just a hypothetical question for you, if I may. If you had a crystal ball, for example, and you could foresee that leaving the EU would be more negative to the United Kingdom than positive, just hypothetically, because it was obviously a democratic referendum, would you still want to go ahead with exiting, even if you could foresee? I know that's not the case right now, but it's just hypothetical. I just want to know.
Well, hypothetically, Joe, are there circumstances that would make me think it's wrong to leave a club that has no democratic legitimacy, that has taken away, as I see it, our birthright? I don't foresee, Joe, any circumstances in which I'm going to think that, and particularly. We might get good governments in this country, we might get bad governments in this country, but Joe, what I'm as certain that the European Union will fail as I was that the United Kingdom should leave it. And just look, Joe, at the mess it's in right now.
I get that, but what my point is that you led the Brexit referendum, you led the Brexit, which was obviously you stood up for something you were passionate and you believed in, and I admire that quality in you. But at the same time, you did leave, bottom line, when that campaign needs you the most, and the tough work started, you're nowhere to be seen.
Joe, I'm sorry,
behind the cameras, but you're not helping to influence.
I'm sorry, old son, but I am, because now what the UK Parliament thinks is pretty much irrelevant. What is going to really matter, Joe, from Wednesday for the next 2 years is what happens in Brussels and what happens in the European Parliament. And I'm going to go on leading a group in the European Parliament. I'm going to go on, Joe, travelling around Europe. I'm going to do more and more speaking, in provincial towns and cities where there are car workers, where there are people that work in the wine industry, the chocolate industry, saying to them, put pressure on your MEPs and your prime ministers, because actually a sensible trade deal works for both of us. So, Joe, contrary to myth, I promise you, I have not run away. Thank you for your hypothetical question. I've got a charming tweet here that I must read out. Remainers would support Brexit if only liars and hypocrites like Nigel Farage didn't sell us a pack of shameless lies, Peter. Peter, they've been lying to us for 50 years. I remember the day the EU constitution was produced in 2004, I went to the press conference. Giscard d'Estaing said, with this document, the European Union becomes a global superpower. And the Minister for Europe, who was one Peter Hain from Labour, told the House of Commons it was just a little tidying up exercise. And they've been doing this ever since my parents voted in a referendum to stay part of what was laughably called a common market. Lies, lies, lies. Oh, and I haven't finished yet. When I did a debate that Nick Ferrari chaired and LBC set up in 2014, and I said one of the dangers of staying in this is we become immersed in a European army, Cleggy said I was a dangerous fantasist. 50 years of lies. Right, I've calmed down now. George in Sevenoaks, good evening.
Hi, Nigel, how are you?
I'm all right. Now, you were a Remainer. What have we got to do to convince you that this democratic result needs to be respected and we've simply got to crack on?
Nigel, originally I was a reluctant Remainer because of the economic reasoning for staying in the EU. But I think this I think you've got to really convince us that when you say take back control, you actually, do take back control. Because you must realise that we live in a globalised society, do you not?
We live in an increasingly
society where
an increasingly interdependent world, George. And one of the key economic reasons for backing Brexit was that to be stuck inside what is effectively a protectionist club without the ability to reach out to other nations, emerging nations around the world, was the wrong way for Britain to go in the 21st century.
Yeah, but Nigel, the reality is that, Angela Merkel's policies on cars, for instance, in Germany are going to have a gross effect on the car industry in Britain and places where like Nissan are and BMW are. The reality is if you want to convince me that we're actually going to take back control, you need to start, working with, people in the EU when we leave. And so
George, I'm trying to do that now. I'm trying to do that now. I mean, the car argument's a bit tangential, but the argument is that the worst case scenario is that up to 10% tariffs would go on motor cars. But equally, George, at the moment, if you buy a Japanese-made motor car, you are paying a 10% tariff. So if you buy a Subaru tomorrow, you're paying 10% more than you could do. And actually, given that the German car manufacturers call Britain Treasure Island because we're their best car market in the world, the last thing those politicians in Munich are actually going to want is for BMW to be disadvantaged in their best market in the world. George, I accept that you need more convincing. I think as time goes on, you will be more and more convinced, because when we see America and nearly 20 other countries saying they now want a special trade relationship with us, surely, George, it means we can go global. Isn't that exciting?
I think that's a bit dreamland at the end of the day. It took Greenland 3 years to leave the EU, didn't it?
It's 2 years.
It took them 3 years to leave, and we've only got a 2-year window of opportunity. The reality is, I think it's just a bit nonsensical to think we can go around the world plucking up these trade deals.
We can, George. We can.
I think you're living a bit of dreamland.
Cheer up, George. Be optimistic. Be bullish. It's all going to happen. Thank you. You can call me about anything you disagree with. If you were a Remain voter, what will it take for you to come on board and support Brexit? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's 7:16.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
So the standoff between WhatsApp and the Home Secretary. Let's bring in first Sir Mingus Campbell, who's former leader of the Liberal Democrats, member of the Intelligence and Security Committee.
She's certainly right to voice her concerns, but the question is what the remedy can possibly be. Looking at what the Home Secretary said, she's asking for cooperation. She doesn't seem to me to be arguing for new legislation. One of the problems, of course, if you're asking for cooperation, unless the other party wants to cooperate, then there's very little you can do.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
With Hampton by Hilton, now open in Aberdeen.
Hello, lazy mornings and breakfast in bed, making plans and thinking ahead. Because really, after all is said and done, all you need is a special someone. And when it comes to finding something new, you can start the conversation at Hello You. Sign up and browse profiles for free at helloyoudating.com and start the conversation today.
Your business is growing. Fantastic. But you need to hire fast. Enter Indeed.com. Already used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. And with more people in the UK using Indeed than any other job site, you'll find more great candidates and sooner on Indeed. Find your next hire on the world's #1 job site, Indeed.com. Terms, conditions, quality standards and usage limits apply. World's #1 job site based on total unique visitors to Indeed.com.
Welcome to London's exquisite Indian dining experience, Marla Restaurant. The finest North Indian cuisine in the most charming setting. Find us in the heart of one of London's divine hidden gems, St Catherine's Dock. Marla Restaurant. Visit us in St Catherine's Dock or go to marlarestaurant.co.uk.
Marla. Discover a jewel in London's secret paradise.
I know how to avoid a soggy bottom. I know the name of cinema's most famous white shark. I know all the things you can do with a Maris Piper. And I definitely know the TV show that made this music famous. But I don't know my state pension.
There's a simple way to find out when you can get your state pension and how much it'll be. Search Your State Pension and get to know yours.
Finally, it's spring. The days are getting longer. Time to gather friends and fire up the barbecue. Get your spring off to the perfect start with Weber. From the 18th of March until the 17th of April, buy a revolutionary Weber Genesis 2 gas barbecue, register it online, and get an iGrill 3 digital Bluetooth thermometer for free. Serving excellent food has never been easier. Visit Weber.com for more information. Weber, for life.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet @LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
If you were a Leave voter in the referendum, I'm encouraging you, depending on your lifestyle, to either make another cup of tea or pour another drink and sit back and listen, because I'm asking for Remainers to ring me, to explain to me why they're so unhappy, or why perhaps they're now resigned to the result. But to tell me, what is it that would convince you to come and support Brexit? And I say this on the back of this exchange I had on breakfast television this morning with Alistair Campbell. That, of course, followed a rally that took place in Westminster on Saturday. Now, how many attended, who knows? Unite said 100,000. They then said 150,000. Some police sources said 25,000. Do you know what? It doesn't really matter. But tens of thousands of people did attend a pro-Remain rally with Alistair Campbell as one of the prominent speakers, and my old friend Nick Clegg saying it was a choice to pull us out of the customs union. It was a choice to embark on that demeaning bout of transatlantic obsequiousness. That's what Clegg has said, because, of course, many people who support Britain in the European Union loathe absolutely everything America has ever stood for. But I don't get this, and I want to know from people who were on that march. I mean, why were you there? Why were you on a pro-Goldman Sachs rally? Why were you on a pro-career professional politician rally? Why were you there supporting the unelected European Commission, who have the sole right to make legislation within the European Union? Why were you all out protesting in favour of the establishment? I just don't get it. Maybe Janet in Willesden can explain this to me. Janet, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I voted to remain, but I was prepared to accept any result because we live in a democracy and we have to take the majority's verdict. And in a way, it helps history to see both sides of the whole coin. We have been in it, and now we're coming out of it, so we want to measure the both sides to see which one is better, and we're waiting to see how it works out. And that's the way it should be. We have to accept it in that sort of way. Not that I wanted to Brexit, but you have to accept what the majority wants. And in a way, we are prepared to look at both sides of the coin now. We've been in it, and now we're coming out, so we want to measure which one works.
Well, Janet, after my exchange at breakfast this morning, I find your attitude towards all of this deeply refreshing, because you're saying it was a democratic result. I accept it. Let's move on. But what is it, Janet? I mean, why are people like Alistair Campbell just refusing to accept this result? Because I've never known it before. I mean, I've known Labour win elections and the Tories hate it. I've known the Tories win elections and Labour hate it. I've never known, Janet, a group of people attempt to deny a result. What's wrong with them?
These people are mad. They don't live in a democracy at all. You have got to accept. There are things that we don't like, but you've got to accept what the majority wants. And the thing is, it's come like a research. Like, we cannot live in one situation all the time. We've been in it. It's obviously there will be people who will be tired of it and they want to come out of it. Yeah. We want to see how it works now.
Right. Janet, we're cracking on. You're a true Democrat and a great lady, and I thank you. Your Facebook messages, Steve says, Article 50 on Wednesday, get your tissues out, cry baby Ramonas. Robert says, it's happening, I voted Leave, and we all have got to pull together and make Brexit work. And David says, out means out, get over it. This is going to be a great country again. On Twitter, I will never support it. Would rather Scotland in the EU than the UK. That's from Wolfie. Well, fine. There are some people that think that. I suspect their numbers have diminished a little bit, but I could be wrong. Young Ramonas were not alive to see how great the UK was before the EU. The EU has made everyone lazy, allowing Brussels to dictate rules, says Victoria Somerset. Well, Victoria, I don't completely agree with that, because whilst in previous decades Britain may have been great, one of the main reasons we actually joined it and we accepted it in a referendum was because actually we were in a very, very bad state. You know, we'd been through a 3-day week. We'd seen inflation up at 27%. Britain was called the sick man of Europe. And we'd seen this amazing post-war German economic miracle. And we thought by joining the common market, we could hitch ourselves to that really, at the time, rather attractive wagon. That's certainly my view. I think we joined the common market because our self-confidence, frankly, was shot. Another tweet. Doing the sensible thing and staying in the EU would be a good start. Would help if you stopped lying continuously. Do you know, it's very interesting, isn't it? And that's anonymous, obviously. Do you know, even Alistair Campbell today, after that little breakfast chat and his refusal of my offer to buy him lunch, even Alistair Campbell said at least Nigel Farage has been utterly consistent throughout all the 20 years he's been campaigning. So, you know, really, you can call me a lot of things on this issue, but please don't call me a liar. I don't think that really sticks. But if you think I'm a liar, well, I tell you what, you can call me 0345 60 60 973. If you think you're hard enough, come and have a go. We go to Peter in Wimbledon. Peter, good evening.
Very good evening to you, Nigel. Nigel, didn't you just say that those who vote for Remain voting for the world of Goldman Sachs?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but didn't you notice that the only organisation has less Goldman Sachs employees on their roll is your friends across the pond, liar Donald Trump in his cabinet. Former bankers from Goldman Sachs are part of his cabinet. Did you notice that? Did you speak to Donald about it?
I did. In fact, Peter,
draining the swamp, cleaning the stable. Is that what it is?
In fact, Peter, I met Stephen Munchin when I was over a few weeks ago. Gary Cohn I knew back in the 1980s when I had a proper job working in the commodities business. And I think what Trump's decided to do is to employ the best and brightest brains, because they're the guys that absolutely know what is wrong with the system. I reckon, Peter, that's a pretty smart thing to do.
Well, it may be a smart thing to do, but that's not what you just said about 5 minutes ago. Nigel, the thing is, the answer to your question is for us Remainers, because you just labelled, Goldman Sachs as being kind of a problem we're living in. We don't want to live in that world. We're going to move away from career politicians like yourself, actually.
Hang on, sorry. Sorry, Peter, what's that?
You are a career politician.
I reject that. I reject that. I had a proper job for 20 years before getting into politics.
But, you've been pretty lousy, actually, politician, because, on the Fishermen Committee, record shows that you only attended once when the British interests were discussed in the European Parliament. This is one of the reasons, Nigel, you have to understand.
Well, Peter, please. Please. What is the point? What is the point of attending a committee meeting when your vote has no legislative force whatsoever? And that was the point. Bob Geldof, of course, tried to point this out to me on the River Thames, in between abusing me, not just abusing me, but also abusing our poor working fishermen. Peter, I think we've run our course on that one. We've had some fun. I'm going to go to Annabelle in Hazelmere. Annabelle, good evening.
Hi there, Nigel.
Hi there. How did you vote, Annabelle, in the referendum?
Well, in fact, I'm 15, so I didn't get to vote.
Right.
For that matter. But what I see is, as a strong believer in democracy, democracy means that everybody in the nation, well, that is, if you vote, you get to have a choose, you get to have a say, or at least show your opinion in political affairs that affect you so much. And I personally think that, I know that, for example, Remainers often feel a lot of resentment to the fact that there was such a clean divide, almost 50-50 between them, and they feel so close that they almost got their voices heard, they almost won this. But I think that the fact is, the majority voted Brexit. Now, regardless of your politics on the matter, and regardless of whether you voted Remain or Brexit, as a person who respects democracy, you should respect the decision the majority of the nation has made. And therefore, I think that we should, to be honest, just rip off the Band-Aid and get this Brexit thing over with.
Well, Annabelle, I think you're absolutely right and totally logical. And indeed, you know, that's in tune with Janet's call that we had earlier. Absolutely. But what is it, Annabelle? I mean, why is it that Alistair Campbell, what made him so angry with me this morning? Is it just losing, or is it deeper than that? I don't know.
Well, I think it's the fact that I really don't think that it helps there was such a clean divide between 50-50, almost all the 52-48.
Yep.
I think that it makes people feel a lot of resentment for the fact that they were so close. And as well as that, I think that it's a matter that really affects you either way. And therefore, I think that perhaps it was a bit of a sort of grudge that he held with losing. Perhaps it was the fact that he felt he was so close to having winning that. I think that may have caused that.
It may have done. It may have done. Annabelle, the line is rotten, but it's great to have a 15-year-old first-time caller who believes strongly in democracy, and whether you like the result or you loathe the result, you accept the result. You get on with it. Text here, Theresa May will not have the courage to trigger Article 50, says Jimmy. Jimmy, I think actually it's going to happen. It's going to happen at 12:30 on Wednesday this week, when the British ambassador in Brussels will go and deliver to Donald Tusk, who was the president of the European Council, Mrs May's letter. At the same time he does that, Mrs May will be on her feet in the House of Commons explaining what she has done. We don't yet know what the contents of the letter are going to be, though I suspect we will do very shortly before all of this happens. And you know what, Jimmy? It's going to be a very, very big moment in our national story. I think we will have passed the point of no return. Oh, there may well be years of wrangling, and I'm very worried about some of the backsliding on fishing and other issues. But I think, Jimmy, it is going to happen. In fact, I know it's going to happen. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30, and time for the news with Tim Humphrey.
Police say there's no evidence the man behind the Westminster terror attack was associated with Islamic State group or Al-Qaeda. Detectives also haven't discovered anything to suggest that Khalid Massoud was radicalised in prison in 2003. The Northern Ireland Secretary of State is giving the political parties more time for discussions to set up a power-sharing government after a deadline passed this afternoon. Sinn Féin and the DUP blame each other for the difficulties. Theresa May has held talks with Scotland's First Minister as she prepares to formally trigger the Brexit process. It comes a day before the Scottish Parliament votes on whether there should be a second independence referendum. LBC weather, dry and chilly tonight with a low of 8, cloudy with sunny spells tomorrow and a high of 17 degrees.
LBC Travel, good evening, I'm Mark Percy. Well, in the West Midlands, the M42 remains closed southbound between junctions 8 and 7 at the M6 interchange. It's after a serious accident this afternoon. It's also very slow past the scene on the northbound side. Heading out of West London on the A40, it's slow from the Target roundabout in Northolt to the Swakeleys roundabout in Ickenham following an accident. In Norbury in South London, the A23 London Road is queuing in both directions at Northborough Road because of water main repairs. And in Essex, London Road in Purfleet is closed because of a fire. That's between Stonehouse Corner and the Purfleet bypass. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
The family member who was concerned. The neighbour who felt uneasy. The teacher who was worried. The coach who noticed at practice. And you. Child abuse. If you think it, report it. Visit gov.uk/tackle child abuse to find out how. Together, we can tackle child abuse.
Writing job descriptions, managing candidates, setting up interviews. Hiring's hard. But Indeed.com makes it easy. Post your job, organise candidates, schedule interviews. All on the UK's #1 job site. And with more people in the UK using Indeed than any other job site, easy works. Find your next hire at Indeed.com today. Terms, conditions, quality standards and usage limits apply. UK's #1 job site based on total unique visitors to Indeed.com.
Highways England is here to improve your journey. Have you noticed the red X's above you when driving on the motorway? Think they're not important? Think again. They mean there's an obstruction or danger up ahead. So if you see one, you must change lanes safely to avoid a penalty, or even worse. So when you see a red X, It's there for a reason. For more information on Red X's, search online for smart motorways.
Finally, it's spring. The days are getting longer. Time to gather friends and fire up the barbecue. Get your spring off to the perfect start with Weber. From the 18th of March until the 17th of April, buy a revolutionary Weber Genesis 2 gas barbecue, register it online, and get an iGrill 3 digital Bluetooth thermometer for free. Serving excellent food has never been easier. Visit Weber.com for more information. Weber, for life.
I know what the plough looks like in the night sky. I know how Eskimos kiss. I know a time when a mullet wasn't a fish. And I definitely know this piece of music. But I don't know my state pension.
There's a simple way to find out when you can get your state pension and how much it'll be. Search Your State Pension and get to know yours.
Here at the Claims Guys, we'd like to offer this assurance to anyone worried by the deadline on PPI claims. There is still time to make your claim. Our experts will work fast to discover if you were ever sold PPI. And once we've completed your free PPI check, you can then pursue your own claim or let us do it for you. It's your choice. Even if you can't find any paperwork, just text the word EASY to 60777 and let the Claims Guys do the rest. Text EASY to 60777 now.
The Claims Guys.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
A lot of Remain voters appear to be very upset and very angry. Nick Clegg, Alistair Campbell, who I had a discussion with on Breakfast TV this morning, and others. I don't think they ever thought that Theresa May would trigger Article 50, but it's going to happen this Wednesday. Yeah, I know, it's taken 9 months. I'm very pleased I didn't hold my breath, but it is going to happen. They simply can't accept it. You know, I'm seeing opinion polls that show that 68% of people now want us just to get on with it. Many of those Democrats, many others, of course, who voted Remain because they were told their property price would collapse. There'd be some terrible disaster. And, of course, none of those things have happened. So, you know, I'm asking you, if you are a Remain voter, what will it take for you to come on board and support Brexit? But first, just a couple of thoughts on the terror situation since last week. It turns out that Khalid Masood, who committed this atrocious act last week, had been radicalised inside a British prison, albeit a C-class British prison. And we've said before on this show, the fact people are being radicalised in schools and prisons when they are state-run institutions, I think is horrifying. And I wonder, I really wonder what Mrs May did for her 6 years as Home Secretary to combat radicalism. And it's something I think we're going to have a debate show on this within the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to encourage people who've worked within the prison service, perhaps anonymously, to ring up and tell us what is really going on, because I'm worried. And secondly, just a little piece of news that security sources have told Sky News that more than 400 former ISIS fighters are now believed to be living back in Britain. These, of course, people who have become battle-hardened, who've been involved with street fighting, who've seen some really pretty appalling things and no doubt become pretty numbed by it. And all of that, I think, is pretty worrying. I have to say, I'd like just to take their passports away and try and stop them ever from coming back into this country. That's my view. No doubt there'll be a lawyer telling me it's illegal and we can't do it because of European human rights. But maybe after Wednesday, all that will change too. Back to the question. If you're a Remainer, what will it take to get you to change your mind? Your Facebook messages coming through, and I have to say, the messaging I'm getting is a little bit more Eurosceptical than the phone calls I'm getting, because I'm encouraging only Remainers to call. But to show a bit of balance the other way, Danielle says, bye-bye. Bye-bye unelected officials, bye EU army, bye-bye to the bankrupting of Greece, Italy and Spain, and to so many other great European countries. That's how I feel, Danielle. I don't actually think that the European Union has just been bad for us. I think for the Mediterranean, actually, the euro has been a catastrophe. James says, I'm a Brexiteer, but I do hope the country come together rather than it be 52 versus 48. James, I think the evidence is there that that is beginning to happen, although not at the upper echelons of politics. And Dave says, I don't understand why you have to be left or right of politics. I can see both sides. I must be more intelligent. Dave, it's not about left or right. In my view, it's about right or wrong. Because traditionally, don't forget, it was the Labour Party. It was Michael Foot. It was Tony Benn. It was figures like this who were the fierce Eurosceptics and the dominant Eurosceptics, actually, back in the 1970s. And as time has gone on, there have been fewer and fewer Labour Eurosceptics and more conservative Eurosceptics. And across Europe, there are people on the right and the left who are vehemently opposed to the euro and indeed to the whole process of European Union. It is not about right and left. It's about nation-state democracy. I completely accept that an independent Britain run by its own government may well make mistakes, but at least we can get rid of those people and vote for new legislation, something we cannot do. Once something becomes law, a European law, is transposed into British law as a member of the Union, there is nothing any of us as voters or all 651 MPs can do to change it. But perhaps a different perspective here. I'm going to go to Jeff in Munich, in Germany. Jeff, good evening.
Yeah, hi, Nigel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and how is Munich?
Yes, Munich is wonderful. I've been wanting to get my hands on you, figuratively speaking, for a long time.
Right, well, here you are. Here's your chance, Jeff. Have a go.
Yeah, can I hit you hard, yeah?
Well, go on, then.
I'm a British expat in Munich. I've been here 25 years.
Yep.
I've also lived in Britain, and I have property in Britain. I have a German child. I'm a British citizen, and I am one of the 100,000 people, British citizens in Germany, who do not know what their future is. And I wonder what your opinion is about what you have actually done to us and the uncertainty you have forced us into. Because you cannot get, citizenship, you cannot get security in any country as you can, fill up your, car with petrol. We are standing in the rain. What is your position on our status?
OK, Jeff, well, look, way before they built those false glass and steel structures in Brussels and stuffed them full of very powerful, well-paid bureaucrats, people like you, Jeff, were living in Munich. People like you were living all over the world. You probably would have to prove who you were and prove you hadn't got a criminal record, and it might have been a little bit more difficult, but people lived all over the world. And, Jeff, here's the argument. As with so many things with Britain's relationship with the EU, there is a massive, gross imbalance. There are about estimated 3.3 million EU citizens permanently living within the United Kingdom. How many UK citizens live within the EU? Well, the official figure's 1.2 million, though I suspect actually the figure's quite a lot lower, because quite a lot of Brits go down to the south of Spain for the winter months. Who can blame them? But either way, there is a massive, vast imbalance. What Theresa May wants to do is to make sure that the rights of people like you, Jeff, are absolutely guaranteed, and that as part of a trade-off to guarantee the rights of EU citizens living in the UK. Jeff, I would do it...
Can I interrupt you, Nigel?
Yeah, go on.
People are not, human beings with children, with families, with jobs, with futures, should not be, pawns.
Well, I rather agree with that, Jeff. I rather agree with that.
Something that you put on the table as you're playing cards. We are human beings, and we and all even the EU people in Britain, and most of them serve the NHS and they serve.
Well, that's not necessarily quite true, but anyway, yeah.
Well, to a certain extent, I mean, I know your position.
Jeff, let me stop you. Jeff, let me stop you and say this to you. I also take the view that neither you nor people in this country who came here legally, now I think far too many came, but they came here legally, I believe that actually it's only a banana republic that retrospectively would change the law on whether somebody should come to a country. So, Jeff, what I actually personally favour is us going into these negotiations and on day one claiming the high moral ground by saying we will absolutely guarantee the rights of the 3.3 million EU citizens to continue living in the United Kingdom. And I think, the reciprocation in terms of you living in Munich would come very, very quickly. I have to say, Jeff, hereafter, it will be more difficult for people to come and settle and live and work in the United Kingdom, but not that much more difficult. But I do honestly think, Jeff, that if people are coming to our country, they should have to prove what their criminal record is or is not. They should bring with them medical insurance to cover the first few years. Does that, Jeff, sound to you a reasonable proposition?
No, I mean, I subscribe to the point of view that if you live in a foreign country, and I speak German, and, I know that you have German connections. Your wife is German, is she not? Yeah?
That's right.
And you have to integrate, you have to learn the language, you have to obey the laws, and you have to support yourself, and you have to provide, a directive, yeah? And show that you are going to be a good citizen and a positive citizen, and you must support the values, which is clear. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's still all up in the air.
Right,
None
Jeff.
of us know.
Jeff, I accept
what the
that, Jeff.
negotiations are coming.
I accept that. I accept that. I'm sure this will be the number one thing on the agenda when these negotiations start after the triggering of Article 50. And I wish, Jeff, for your sake and for many others, we hadn't waited 9 months since the referendum to remove that certainty. And I thank you for your call and the sincerity that was there behind it. Ted, in Worcestershire, were you a Remainer, Ted?
Yes, I was.
And how do you feel now?
How could I put it? Yeah, disappointed. But my question to you is, Nigel.
Yeah.
You made the statement just now that we'll be able to trade globally.
Mm-hmm.
What's stopping us trading globally right now?
Well, actually, Ted, that's a very good question. And maybe, sometimes there is too much emphasis placed on this customs union that we're part of with the European Union. There is the World Trade Organization, which sets some basic benchmarks for trade. In terms of manufacturing goods, it covers virtually all of it. With services, agriculture, it's a little bit different. Ted, there is nothing stopping us trading internationally, other than the fact we're not able to make special relationships with other countries, which might make it a little bit easier. Ted, one of the shocking things is that actually, as members of this single market, and even though we're banned from having our own trade deals around the world, the growth of our trade has been slower with the European Union than it has with the rest of the world. By removing those barriers to the rest of the world, I'm actually, Ted, really excited about the prospects. And I'll tell you something, I was in the airport last week in America coming home. I independently met 3 British businessmen who've been touring all over America last week. They have never been more bullish or more optimistic. So Ted, I think the future's bright.
But nothing's stopping us trading then. You're in agreement there.
No, and nor Ted.
Even countries like Italy, and especially Germany, as you know, trade far more with China than we do. Far more.
Yes,
Even Italy, a basket case like Italy, Nigel.
I think we've been
more with China than we do.
I think we've been too Eurocentric. We've been.
Why is that, though?
And equally, Ted, the opposite of the argument's true. That if we leave the European Union with no trade deal, there's nothing will stop us going on trading with European countries as well. So actually, it cuts both ways, Ted. I get it. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. The time now is 7:46.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Both Labour and UKIP have launched today their 6 tests for Brexit. Have you got a way of testing the Brexit deal, or is it as simple as Brexit means Brexit?
Clive Bull on LBC.
All this week, LBC is running a special report on child protection with the Department for Education. Listen to Sheila Fogarty from 1 p.m. as she talks to experts and explores the role individuals can play in protecting children and young people from abuse and neglect. Together, we can tackle child abuse. If you think it, report it. For more information, head to lbc.co.uk.
Divorce. It affects every part of your life. You, your family, your home, your finances. And if you're a man facing divorce, perhaps even one you don't want, the situation becomes even more complicated. It's at times like these that you need a professional you can trust. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordellcordell.co.uk office in central London. A partner men can count on.
It started with a letter in the mail. And then another. That's when they started. Soon you hear her. And now you're just struggling and panicking and just, how did it get so bad? The more you hide from debt, the worse it becomes. Capitalise has been helping thousands of people across London manage their debt with free, impartial, face-to-face advice. Get help today at capitalise.org.uk.
Highways England is here to improve your journey. Have you noticed the emergency refuge areas along the motorway? You might have wondered what they're for. Not this.
I need the toilet.
Or this.
Are you tired? Do you want me to drive?
Or even this. Emergency refuge areas are on motorways for emergencies only. For more information on emergency refuge areas, search online for smart motorways.
I know how to avoid a soggy bottom. I know the name of cinema's most famous white shark. I know all the things you can do with a Maris Piper. And I definitely know the TV show that made this music famous. But I don't know my state pension.
There's a simple way to find out when you can get your state pension and how much it'll be. Search Your State Pension and get to know yours.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions working harder with The Pension Works.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Why are the Remainers like Nick Clegg and Alistair Campbell so upset, so angry, and indeed their diminishing band of supporters so personal, so unpleasant about everything they say and do? I mean, Laurie O'Connor twitters, "I will support Brexit if you quit politics and remove yourself from the public eye. Fair deal." It's all very, very personal. Gosh, Laurie, you must have been really upset by that referendum result. Carol M. sends me a tweet. She says, "Is that gravy train that Farage is still slurping at?" Yeah, but hang on, Carol. I was the turkey that voted for Christmas. So be fair. Adam on Facebook cheers me up a little by saying, "Democracy has finally worked for the first time in my life." Adam, do you know what, mate? I agree with that. The number of people who said to me, "I haven't voted in my life. I haven't voted for 20 years, but I went out and did it on June 23rd last year. And do you know what? We beat the establishment." So it's not all Ramonas. There are millions of people out there who are going to be celebrating on Wednesday and saying, hooray, we've actually helped to change the course of the history of this country. I'm going to go to Tony in Twickenham. Tony, good evening. Were you a Remain voter?
Good evening, Nigel. Thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Not a bit.
Was, yes.
Yes?
Correct. I voted Remain. However, I am not a Remainer as such. I do accept the fact that the majority voted to exit.
Okay.
And that's fine. Now, whilst I do not share your optimism, I do not have a crystal ball. You might have one, and you can see in the future.
It's
I'm
not,
really
I promise you.
But I'm really worried about what's going to happen. Now, my question to you is this. If all the experts have warned about the economic disaster that's going to happen.
Yep.
If we leave the EU. If all those difficulties such as a shortage of nurses, a house price falls...
Hang on, Tony, it's not happening, man, is it?
Yes. My question is this, though. If down the line, 2 or 3 years down the line, if the economy of the UK and we suffer as a result, as a direct result of us exiting the EU, are you prepared to apologise to this country and leave the politics altogether? Yes or not, Nigel?
Well, there isn't much of a tradition here, is there? Because Alistair Campbell, who I row with today, has yet to apologise for the dodgy dossier or taking us into a war that cost us much gold and blood and did more harm than good. And I haven't noticed Gordon Brown apologising for selling off nearly 400 metric tonnes of gold at below $300 an ounce. And I haven't noticed anybody that supported us joining the euro saying, I'm really, really sorry, we were leading you in... Oh, and those that signed us up to the ERM and saw us squander our reserves. I see hardly anybody resigning, hardly anybody apologising. Tony, if Brexit is a disaster, I will go and live abroad. I'll go and live somewhere else. But do you know what, Tony? Do you know what, Tony? It isn't going to be a disaster. We've just managed to get ourselves in a lifeboat off the Titanic. The EU does not work, Tony. It's failing. It's failing. Can't you see, Tony? The EU is failing.
I can't see that. It might be. However, I think the EU will be stronger in the years to come, and you will see. You didn't answer my question, though. Are you prepared to apologise to this country? I did.
I answered you in full. Come on. Even when I give you the answer, you're not prepared to accept it. Tony, you got your answer. Freddie in Norwich, what is going to persuade you to back Brexit?
I voted Remain, and essentially, I've come to terms. I've looked at both sides of the argument and said, I understand why people have voted each way. For me, it's not actually the economic and regulatory things which come with leaving the EU. I think those things will all resolve themselves eventually, But for me, it's a sort of the wave of racism and prejudice and behaviour which has been brought on with Brexit.
The evidence of that, Freddie, is really diminishing. There was a very, very big attempt.
No. All I have to do is look at the comments and look at in this LBC show and see what your followers of you essentially. The values they uphold and they
Freddie, I think actually, Freddie, come on, mate. I think actually the abuse is not based on race or anything else. The abuse is all directed at me, and it's directed at people who were prominent people in the Brexit campaign. That's where the real anger is in this country today, isn't it? It's that narrow group of people who just cannot reconcile themselves with this historic result.
Well, I've come to terms with it, but the amount of sort of videos and bits of journalism and news broadcasting where I've seen people's justification for voting to leave, not as for the economic and regulatory benefits, but for the terms of essentially just dismissing people as immigrants and dismissing them by their religion. I think that's going to create a hostile environment.
Freddie, there is no evidence at all, apart from some attempts to cook it up, that Brexit has done anything like that whatsoever. If you want to find people with obnoxious views, they were there long before Brexit even hove into view, I promise you. I've got a text here. Nigel, honestly, all this protesting is turning quite ugly and nasty. I'm fed up with it. I didn't like it when Blair won, but I had to put up with it. Yes, now people know what a disaster he was. I welcome Brexit. Thank you. Anne in Blackburn. Kevin says, all I see are undemocratic Ramonas and I'm loving it. Brexit is the best thing to happen in this country in my lifetime. And Kevin is 53 years young. I'll be joining you next Monday, Kevin, on that number. And Charlie says, the most ironic thing is when Brexiteers talk about unelected officials, when we have an unelected PM and ministers who can now change EU laws. Yeah, point is, Charlie boy, we can get rid of them. Next election, turf the whole lot out and vote for a different party with a manifesto that undoes all they've done. One of the most principled democratic arguments against being in the European Union is that not only do the unelected European Commission have the sole right to propose legislation, but once something becomes EU law and national law, there is nothing the voter in this or any other European country can do to change one dot or comma of it. And believe me, I've been in the European Parliament long enough to be absolutely right about that. Jay says, if you voted for Brexit so you can control your future, you must be pretty deluded. The average Joe doesn't control nothing in or out of the EU. Well, Jay, I'll make the point one more time. You will be able at general elections to vote for parties with completely different policies and with the ability to sweep away legislation and put in place something different. It doesn't guarantee a successful future, But what it does do is mean that we are in charge of our own destiny, and we can adapt and change the way Britain is to suit our needs, not the needs of 27 other countries as well, whose interests are so different that, frankly, it's very tough to find a common position, I think, that works for anybody. I'm going to go to Oliver in Barnsley. Oliver, Barnsley was pretty solid Brexit country, wasn't it?
Yes, it was the top third.
Yes.
80-20, I believe it was, something like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm really worried about, Nigel, because I voted Remain.
Yes.
I'm going to be upfront. I think it's a really bad decision. Time will tell what happens. But let's face facts, Nigel. The government and Barnsley itself, my town, has never, ever recovered since the miners' strike. And you're looking at a town that has had zero government investment ever. Now, 10 years ago, the EU started investing in Barnsley. We got new businesses, new buildings, new everything.
But Oliver, it was our money anyway.
But it's coming even more so from the EU. Now, we've got a programme called Enterprising Barnsley, is solely funded from EU funding.
Oliver, I get your point,
Barnsley.
Oliver. I get your point. But remember this. There's no such thing as EU money. It's our money that gets recycled, comes back, and is often spent badly. Oliver, I would love to spend more time with you. I'm sorry, we're completely out of time. My final thought is this. Our professional career, political class are not used to losing, and they can't get it. They won't face up to it. And I think in the end, they're going to be swept away because common sense, good British common sense, will prevail. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins, but up next, it's Clive Bull.
Thank you, Nigel. So coming up later on at 9, it's the Business Hour. We've got advice on how to start up a new business or take it to the next level with startup expert, author and entrepreneur Daniel Priestley. Plus, Baroness Michelle Moan joins me to offer her tips for budding entrepreneurs and to talk about the current climate for